All right. Welcome along again, this time to the September monthly webinar. You'll notice that it's actually later in the month than normal. We were looking, as Robbie will confirm, we were looking to have Dean Lester on to speak about some speed maps and things like that. But obviously with the Spring Carnival about to hit its peak, he's extremely busy and we've got him locked in for a future webinar. But Robbie, a good friend of yours, Dino?
Yeah, very good friend. And as you say, Corey gets very busy this time of the year, understandably, with the spring. But we're looking forward to having him on later in the year.
Yeah, and he'll speak obviously in more depth about some of the things that you'll speak about with the planning tonight. But obviously, there's a lot that goes into planning. We might just go straight on to the next bit here. Matt, this is a favourite topic for you, so you can talk about your day now. What's a daily routine when you get up in the morning?
Yeah, well, my alarm goes off at 3. Robbie's at about 5, so it's a bit of an unfair advantage. No, I'm just joking. Our stables, we start at 4 a.m. in the morning, check all the horses, if they've left any food overnight and that nothing's happened overnight, that they're not feeling sick, take their temperatures, if there's any sign of them not feeling well. And then we just go through the routine of loading them up on the walkers, give them a nice stretch before they get the saddle on. Obviously, then we leg the riders up, tell the riders, instruct them on what workout we would like to be done for the morning. The riders go out and do that. That's after we've obviously checked their legs, trotted them up, made sure that we're really happy with them before they go out on the track. And the riders go out on the track, also give them a warm-up, a little trot around the trotting ring, probably the equivalent of a kilometre trot. And then they go out and do the work, which could consist of various different things. You can see on your pictures there, that's the trail track, so that'll be an easy day for them. Or we'll have the gallop, as you can see on the right-hand side. You gallop on the grass tracks. Cranbourne's got loads of facilities. They got 3 or 4 grass tracks, a poly track, main fast sand track. So there's various options on every single day. So each day, fortunately, is not exactly the same for each horse. It's all dependent on where they're running, how deep in their prep are they. So every day is going to be different for each horse, which is why the day before we do a lot of planning. And then, so once the morning work is over for the horses, then myself and Robbie start doing things like nominations, acceptances, updates. Then, we start planning for the next day, the work for the next day. And then if there's racing, then one of us or both of us will be off to the races that day and hopefully saddling up winners, etc.
Yeah, and I guess the reason for this topic, Robbie, my thoughts were a lot of the feedback from our survey that we did recently were a lot of people asking about their own individual horse and how, what the horse is prepared for, which races it's going to be targeted at. And I guess if you wanted to touch on how much goes into all of that planning, obviously we know it's a lot, but I guess for our owners, how does that planning process take place for training the horse and obviously for races?
Yeah, well, I mean, naturally, the younger the horse, the more input they have. And what I mean by that is that, as the horse in question is evolving with their talent and their race credentials, helps Matt and I direct which path they take, and what we mean by that. Springtime's a really good example of that. You'll see, a young horse like Daily Bugle that ran in the Stud Stakes the other night. He's going to help create his own path towards, the Guineas. And then you'll see a lot of trainers this time of the year have either maiden horses or lightly raced horses that'll win at the lower level and then quickly race their way through to the high class races. So their talent will help design the programs based on performance and so on. So that's what we mean by they will help us decide which pathway they take. So their programs will be set and changes will be made based upon how they're responding to their training, how their performances on the track will determine which pathway they take, and how their recovery is, because they're young, they don't always handle many runs. And then the older horses, their performances also will determine which way they go. So what all trainers do, and Matt and I are the same, we'll sit down and see how the horses are handling the workload, how they're recovering, what the weather's doing, and which pathway we'll take to what we think is the ideal goal for their racing campaign.
Yep. And obviously for our audience, we've got a very limited amount of stuff that I've got tonight. The whole point of tonight is for the audience to ask questions, whether it's about their horse, whether it's about anything to do with training that they might want to know. So the first question I had was from Bev Fisk. And Bev actually rang me today because she just wanted to know a couple of things on terminology. So, for example, you speak about evens, and you also speak about horses breezed up in, say, 12 seconds for the last 200 and things like that. She wanted to know the relevance and whether that was fast or not, and obviously the terminology, breezing up, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, we have some funny terminology in racing, and it's a good idea, Bev, to ask the questions, because evens is a pretty it's a pretty widespread speed used in racing or training. It's 15 seconds per 200 meter increments, and it's the reason it's called evens. It's when the riders in training maintain that 15-second speed, and it's not galloping. Galloping speed is 12. Canter speed is around 23. Strong canters around 20. So as you can see, it's at 15, it's a high enough speed to get the heart rate and fitness at a good standard, but it's not stressing or fast enough at a galloping speed to get them to that fitness of race day. So it's an in-between. It's like a light gallop, if that makes sense. Breezing up is around that 12-second mark. So when a horse breezes, it's running pretty quick to race speeds around 11, and breezing up somewhere between 11 and 12. Breezing's around a comfortable galloping speed where the horse is happy to go very close to race speed without pushing them to the point where they're not comfortable. So I hope that answers your question, Bev.
Yep, and breeze up, just the term breezing up, obviously just means a gallop. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's pretty much going as fast as a horse wants to go without pushing them out of their comfort zone. And most of the time, that will be very close, if not at race speed. And you'll often see in America they have breeze up sales, or what we call here ready to run sales. So it is very, very quick speed. Breeze up will pretty much come from that terminology, I would imagine, in the States where they're running very quick.
Yeah, and Matt, I guess obviously over the weekend we saw Daily Bugle run a great race, but we also saw some more Newgate horses win races that will make them stallions, and they've got about 5 million stallions now. I guess that's what every owner wants a horse to become a stallion or a Group 1 winner. When you're looking at the youngsters that we have now, that must be exciting every morning coming in, and which ones are showing you that they might be the next big thing.
Yeah, Corey, it was a good weekend for racing for a number of reasons. Daily Bugle ran a top race. It was his third run in, and that's a good example of a horse starting to peak. And as you can see by his performances, they just got better and better each run. And then with regards to the Newgate's situation, anything they touch these days just seems to turn to gold. And interesting to note that their Group 1 winner was out of a South African mare. So that's some South African breeding and form coming through, which is a big thing for me. And with the 2-year-olds, it's obviously very exciting because, like Robbie said, their talent's going to guide their careers. And every morning we're coming in and trying to unearth that new talent, and hoping that one of them is putting their hands up to be a top colt. And at the moment, we're very excited about a lot of colt affiliates. At the moment, we're very excited about a lot of them, Corey. And I don't want to mention names in case I forget one and someone gets upset or whatever. But at the moment, the future is looking really, really bright for us.
Yeah, and I've got a question here from Craig Abernethy, Robbie. So how do you decide when a horse is to race? So obviously both the babies and the horses returning from a spell, how do they actually tell you when they're ready to have a race as opposed to a trial or a jump out?
It's a good question. You'll often hear Matt and I and Jade talk in the updates about horses' growth patterns, how their backside's higher than their wither, and so on. Or you talk about us, talking about growth plates and horses laying down, and a lot of terminology about them growing. So quite often we wait for that growth to stabilise before we take them to the racetrack. It's sometimes they'll be running very fast times or trialling very well, and we still won't go to the races because we'll see indicators at home at the stables that they're laying down or they're tired or they're growing. So we won't want to subject them to race day pressures whilst they're going through these growth changes. So it's not always about what they're showing at the training track. It'll be other factors that will stop us from going to the races. So long story short, we need to see stability in all of those indicators that we look for. And once we see that stability, that's normally when us in our stable will go to the races. Hopefully that answers Craig's question.
Yeah, that's good. And Matt, there's a lot of talk here. So this is from Paul Baker. Just hearing recent talk of later starts closer to normal hours to attract and keep younger staff and safer travel driving to and from work. Also, a secondary question to that, I guess, is it difficult to get staff in this industry? And then if you could answer Paul's question there.
Yeah, it's a good question because it's been a well-debated topic. And even before I've arrived in Australia, it's been a well-debated topic. So I'm sure Robbie has a lot of knowledge on it as well, and probably will want to add to that. But I think the key is, for some people, it suits them to start early because they can, at 8 o'clock when they're done work in the morning, they can go off and do other jobs or go and see to their kids for the day or etc. So I think the option that I've listened to all the debates and everything, and the option that I liked was that keep the early starts at 4 a.m. but open the tracks for longer until like 10, 11, so that if Robbie Griffiths and Matt DeCock want to start at 6, then they can start at 6 because they're allowed to finish at 11, instead of saying you can start at 4, but you have to be off the tracks by 9. So I would go and say that would be a better option to keep the tracks open. It gives everybody the options of doing what fits their business and their company best.
Yep. And Robbie, if you wanted to expand on that, and also Paul's got another question there, which is just the time spelling. Is the time that a horse spells equal to the time it takes them to get fit? So, for example, 10-week spell, 10 weeks of training. Is that true, or does every horse differ? That was his question.
Oh, every horse differs. The old rule of thumb has always been 1 week out, 2 weeks back to get fit. But pretty much once a horse has a full spell of a month out, it normally takes that 10 weeks back to get back to full fitness. Especially the older they get. The older they get, it tends to take longer to get fully fit.
Yeah. And Craig Miguel's said hi, lads. So hi to Craig. Welcome. And finally, Kevin Nolan just asked, at some point, do you try and maximise a horse's earning potential at the detriment of its chances of winning a race? I guess that would be a balance.
Say that again. What was that one?
Some point, do you try to maximise a horse's earning potential at the detriment of winning a race? I would think that it'd be better if you won the race for prize money anyway, wouldn't it?
What do you mean by that? By not winning to get the rating down? Is that what you mean by that?
I'm guessing something like that. Do you look at, I guess if I rephrase it just so I think I'm on the right track here, Kevin, let us know if we are wrong, but I'm thinking, would you train a horse for a particular race knowing it's better prize money than winning maybe a lesser race?
If I'm not confused, I think that if I'm understanding the question properly, I think all handicapping racing has been for many, many years. If you're wanting to have a goal race, your preference would be to win the grand final, aka Bart Cummings has been doing it for years when he was alive, to win the cup would be to win on that day and not win on the way through, to avoid a penalty. I think that's what the question is alluding
maybe,
to.
Yeah.
Maybe an example. What I think maybe he's asking is like, let's say you got that the sires race, I think it is, or the showdown, Robbie, and would you give up running in a maiden, winning a maiden, or running 9th or 10th in the showdown? You know you can't win, but you can earn 20 grand if you finish in the first 10. You know,
maybe get some elaboration on that. Can you elaborate on that question?
Yep, will do. If you could ask us there, that'd be great, Kev. If you could sort of elaborate the exact question there, and we'll get the boys to answer. And then Craig Miguel, this is one for you, Matt, I think, which is a good one. And then Robbie can expand on it because he's the king of Cranbourne. But hi, lads. What has the change been like since the influx of new trainers coming to Cranbourne?
They haven't turned up.
Yeah, they haven't arrived yet. So
I did hear you say at one stage, Matt, that that you thought it was going to be better for you guys because obviously it shows off your training techniques when owners come to look at what people are doing. Obviously, you know, you're pretty confident in your own brand, and also it's a better yardstick at the trials. Obviously, you're going to have better horses at the trials because there's more stables. Is that correct?
It's only going to be a positive for Cranbourne because it's just a what do you call it, a stamp of approval of the facilities that we have, that we attracting these big names like Kieran Marr and Mick Price and them, Lord Kennywell. It's just a stamp of approval that they want to be there. I mean, when I came over and traveled around Australia and decided that Cranbourne was the best place to be, also it came with the knowledge of having seen many places overseas, and me and my dad had identified Cranbourne as the future of racing, and that's the way it's headed. And you've been there yourself, Corey, in the mornings at 7:30 in the morning. The track's like a ghost town. And that's because there's so many options at Cranbourne. There's not only the abundance of tracks, swimming pools, there's treadmills, there's the trail tracks, then there's horses racing on the day. So the trainer might have 60 boxes and 60 horses, but not every horse is going on the track that day because they're at different parts of their racing campaign. So Cranbourne is big enough, I think, to handle the influx of horses, and it's good enough. It's a world-class facility, and it's only going to keep rising, I think.
Yeah. And we'll move. So race days, couple of questions quickly. First one is Kevin Nolan just has sent his question through there, Robbie. So that's exactly how Matt explained it. He said, would you aim for a higher race that you may fail and get more money? Or would you try and win at a lower grade for less prize money, but take the win?
Yeah, well, it just depends on the circumstances surrounding the ownership group, and I think Matt summed it up well before. Sometimes it depends on the sex of the horse too. You know, like we might put some nominations in the Edward Manifold on Saturday because some of those fillies in that race are still maidens, Group 2, $300,000 race. You know, so we might elect to have a throw at the stumps, as the saying goes, because you can always run in a maiden. They're around 365 days of the year, whereas a Group 2 $300,000 race for fillies isn't. You know, so you might do that in that scenario for those very valid reasons. Very much like Matt was talking before. You know.
Yep. Here's one for you, Matt. When Matt joined the stable, I remember he commented that he thought horses in South Africa and the UK ran longer campaigns before spelling. Since you've been with Griffith de Kock, horses have been running in longer stints. Have you changed your view, or is your view still the same? So do horses have longer preparations overseas or here? Yeah.
I still remain of the fact that in general, horses overseas do have longer campaigns. But I mean, it's not needless to say that horses like Don't Tell the Boss and King Magnus are still running awesome races, really deep in their campaign or preparation, whatever word you guys want to use. And that's testament again to the facilities at Cranbourne that we're able to use. It's basically what I think it is. It's more of a trend that happens here in Australasia. than anything else. Whereas in Europe and in South Africa, we race mostly, all year round.
Yep. And Robbie, I guess obviously I've got racing up there, and there's a picture of Matt there with Alana and yourself on screen there too with Dwayne Dunn and in our colours. But how much of a buzz is race day for a trainer? I guess that's what it's all about.
Oh, it's a massive buzz, and I see Matt's already got the trophy under his arm there. That was pretty good. It's a massive buzz, and it's we're very much looking forward to when the owners can get back to the races, because it's so much more of a buzz when you got that activity of everyone there. But it is fantastic because it's what all your work compiles to, that crescendo of all your work leading towards the success of the early mornings, compiling towards victory. And so to have it all come together, it's sensational. It's what it's all about. So, it's fantastic.
And Nick Johnson's just asking when you think people will be back at the races. Has there been much talk about that in the Trainers Association?
Oh, well, yes and no. I mean, there is talk. I mean, there's Racing Victoria were very bullish in their approach to mandating the vaccines amongst us licensed people. That come out last week, and that was a step forward towards trying to protect the industry. And how far they take it, we're not sure, but certainly it's a step forward, to trying to get our industry stronger. And we like everyone, we're following the sort of the roadmap that the governments are putting out there, and we're all hoping to get everyone back on track. And we're sort of we're listening to news at head office there, hoping that we can get people back on track ASAP too. So we haven't got anything in concrete yet, Nick. We're hoping that it's sooner than later.
Yeah, and I've just launched a poll there just with some alternative ownership opportunities, and just to get people's ideas. There's nothing really there set in concrete. It always is nice to see what people's thoughts are. So please fill those in if you can, guys. It's always nice to do surveys and that type of thing for us to understand what you guys think. Matt, I guess race days, what can go wrong in a race day? There's so many moving parts to a race day, but I guess from a trainer's perspective, what are the first things that you stress about on a race day?
When you wake up in the morning, you hope that the horse ate up overnight and doesn't have a temperature or anything like that. From the start of the day, there's so much that can happen on the day. It's a scary day for a trainer, and it's scary right up until the point when the gates open, because then it's completely out of your hands. I mean, you got to still transport them to the races. They could get stuck in traffic. They could pull a shoe on the floats. They could
For the meeting once you're there.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many things you could. I don't know. You leg the jockey on, and then they go down to the start, pull a shoe at the start, or they miss the jump, or they do like King Magnus, jump out and start bucking. And there's so many things on the race day that makes a trainer nervous, and that's a lot of things that are not in our hands, which makes it even more terrifying. But that's why when it comes off, it's one of the biggest highs that you can have, definitely.
Yeah, I think, obviously the wins are fantastic, Robbie, but I've got a couple of questions here that have come through. So we'll move on from race day to planning a career, but a lot of the questions are surrounding training and racing. So I guess it all comes into the planning. John Hymett says, why don't we have many true handicap races over the full year rather than just throughout the carnivals?
Why don't we have well, I suppose with the benchmark racing now, there's more and more horses that fall into that category under the handicap rating, like under the true handicap. More and more horses are into that under 80 rating. And the genuine horses that are above 84 or into that 90 plus that fall into the spring category don't really exist all year round. That's to be fair. So to make up the field sizes throughout the calendar year, the majority of horses will be under 90.
Yep. Yep. We've got another question here. So, sorry, I'm just going through the questions as we go. Matt and Robbie. So this is one for Matt. Matt and Robbie, how do you decide who does what, and do you have training ideas and methods that are similar, or do you sometimes have disagreements?
So this is in regards to who does what in the morning and
What, and do you always agree, or you're on the same page, I guess, is the question, which we all know is a yes, but you must differ in some things.
yeah, well, obviously, I've come from a completely different background, but I think that's the beauty of the partnership is that, we have different ideas and we seem to meet in the middle. And, we discuss everything, discuss the horses in the morning, what work they're going to be doing the next day, what races we're headed for. And the beauty of it is Robbie's brought fresh ideas to me and I've brought fresh ideas to Robbie. And hopefully with this new crop of 2-year-olds and young horses, we're going to be reaping the benefits of that over the course of the next, couple of seasons.
Yeah, and Robbie, Michael Spore's just asking, how often do we use the beach for training or recovery, and how do you select which horses do that?
We use the beach regularly, and how do we do that? We use it with horses that are having long campaigns, and we use it to keep them mentally fresh, in between runs, and we might use it for unsound horses. It just depends on how long they've been in, which ones go down there. Matt and I will decide that. We often send horses down to Lauriston. They go down to Coronella, and they'll be out in the paddock during the day. And they'll, actually, the horse on the screen there, our Chevalier, has been down there many a time in between runs, and so on. Lady Doro goes down there, been down there many a time. A lot of the mares have been. To have extended racing campaigns. So the benefit of Cranbourne, we're actually licensed to use Balnarring also. So the benefit of Cranbourne is once you go out the back gate, there's 4 beaches within close proximity, plus the water walkers as well, and there's so many paddocks. So we'll just pick and choose the horses there. Most of the ones that you've seen in training for long periods of runs have had access to and have been at either beaches or similar facilities that suits their mentality to do that.
Yep. And Matt,
hey, Corey, if me and Robbie ever have a disagreement, we just settle it over an arm wrestling match. And that's hence the reason why when I came here last year, Robbie needed shoulder surgery.
One for you, Matt. Our written tycoon colt, this is from Brendan Byron. Our written tycoon colt is described as very coltish and knows his own strength. If a horse is said to be coltish, what does that mean, I guess? And does it effectively mean that he'll end up being gelded?
Yeah, it means that he takes a bit more management. So we have to do certain things, put certain people on him because colts are dangerous. They are dangerous. So that, like I said, they've got to be managed better. And if it comes to a point where it's starting to interfere with his work and his progress as a young horse, then we've got to make that decision. Right, guys, this is now interfering with his, like I said, his progress. And he needs to be gelded because if he carries on in this manner, it's going to affect his racing performance. So at the moment, he's probably, that individual colt's hanging on by the, what do they say? Hanging on by the skin of his teeth, because he is very coltish. Yeah, the skin of something else. So that decision is something we don't take very lightly because obviously people invest money in well-bred horses like a written tycoon colt with the big dream that one day could be a stallion. But like I said, we're in the business of racehorses, and if it's going to hindrance his racing career, then you got to make that decision.
One thing about that too, Corey, is that, as Matt said, all trainers want colts to remain colts because it's so lucrative and trainers get bonuses out of them being colts too. So there's a vested interest in keeping them colts, and that's the absolute utmost. But we do have a duty of care to our staff, and we got to provide a safe workplace. And if some of these colts can become dangerous when half a ton starts jumping around, if you can't provide a safe workplace in any Australian workplace, you have to then be forced to make those harsh decisions. So sometimes it's taken out of our hands for those reasons, and people have to understand that.
Yep. Grant Carstens is just asking whether we'll have a stable day once we're allowed to soon. I can answer that. That's an absolute yes.
Yeah.
As soon as we can have our owners back at the races or at the stables, we'd love to do whatever we can do for them. I've got a few questions here, but the first one, Robbie, just before we move on from the last slide on planning, a lot of questions that I get in sales and marketing are around, or communications are around, with those young horses that potentially we don't know their level just as yet. Some people were always, quite often asking, what are our plans for that horse? And speaking to you guys at the stable, that's not always easy to plan for a young horse when they've got no exposed form. Would that be, if you could sort of explain that for maybe people that own a 2-year-old or own a 3-year-old that's really lightly raced?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and a lot of that, a lot of those sort processes is very much just what we see at home, whether he or she, as we're educating the young horses, whether they got quick reflexes, and whether what sale they've come from. If they're a Magic Millions horse, are we going to target them that way? If they're an English horse, if their growth pattern is going to be best suited to, say, a Blue Diamond Prelude that kicks off Australia Day, January 26. Once again, reiterating what I said earlier, are they going to grow out to the right time frame of late January or Sydney Easter, or the big part of that programming is very much around their growth patterns. In terms of their talent, what sort of times are they running? We could, somewhere along the way, we'll match them up against one of the older class, speed horses in the stable. They might sprint, alongside, a Hal Warson, for example, one of the speed older sprinters, to see where they're at with their times and pressure. We might trial them against one of the older horses, something along those lines. Glenn Fiddick, when we were educating him as a younger horse, he trialled up against older speed horses before he ran in the spring, and measured up and so on. So, there's some of the things you look at. Daily Bugle sort of did the same when he was being educated, and he come out and won on debut and measured up in the autumn and so on. So there's some of the snippets of information that hopefully will answer those questions as we sort through the young horses' talents, but more importantly, their growth patterns will direct them as to which pathway they take.
Yep, thanks for that. Here's one for Matt. Do you notice a difference in recovery rates between fillies and colts? So that's a question from Denny Dagan, who used to be sports physio for the New Zealand football team, so soccer. So I know that because I know Denny, and so he would be looking at that from a sports science background, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'd like to know what his answer would be if I asked him the same with regards to the humans. But I haven't noticed a significant difference in either. Doing work on the treadmill and stuff, if a horse has a good cardio, it doesn't matter if it's a filly or a colt or a gelding. A lot of it has got to do with attitude. So sometimes you might find the fillies are very highly strung and they don't recover as quickly, but that's sometimes just purely an attitude thing. And same thing with the colts, after a race, getting very, that adrenaline rush, or after a workout in the morning, getting very pumped up. So they don't recover as well. Whereas a gelding generally is a bit calmer. So they may recover, a little better, but those were if it was all equal. But I mean, I've seen some superstar fillies, superstar colts, superstar geldings, all with great cardios, and I wouldn't be leaning towards one or the other as a trend,
Yep. And Robbie, could you explain some of the jargon used? This is from Will Setterino. Some of the jargon used by jockeys. Often you do this as well, being an ex-jockey. But if you could maybe explain some terms such as on the bridle, off the bridle, gave me a cart into the corner, those types of things.
Yeah, it can be difficult to understand, can't it? When on the bridle and off the bridle, and the bridle never left their head. You think, how the hell does that work? You know?
Do you think they do it on purpose when they ride a bad race? They do all this jargon to confuse everyone.
I agree, and we had some of that jargon yesterday off one of the riders, and I sent them quite a colourful text message, I tell you. Anyway, well, some of that on the bridle basically means that the horse has got the bit strong in their mouth and should have plenty of energy left. Off the bridle means that there's pretty much no energy there. One of the latest buzz things is strong through the line, which means that they're still going well. I'd rather them be 2 lengths in front and weak through the line and winning the race personally. But, so there's a few, getting a cart along is a little bit like following a horse in front, where you're basically like the cyclist. They follow another one to cut the breeze. There's another expression where you're letting the bike rider in front of you cut the breeze for you, so you're getting the drag. So that's what a cart along is in horse terms. So some of the jockeys say the suck run, which is basically cutting the breeze, cart along. There's a few different ways of saying that. What's another terminology? Waiting for the horse to come under me when they never parted company. Come under me means that they want it to relax. That's another terminology that is often not understood. What's another one, Corey?
A trail, which is just
same thing.
Yeah,
that's
same thing. Yeah.
In front of you. That's doing the donkey work. That's another one where the horse in front does the work. So anyway, but if any of those sayings come along and they don't make sense, because we do get confusing jargon, we still often been metric since 1972 or something, and we still talk a little bit of imperial. The horse ran in a mile race and the last half mile, and then we strode home the last 400 meters. So we get a little bit confused with our jargon in racing. So if any of those terminologies need explaining, by all means, send them through and we'll do our best.
On the chewy, what does that mean? John Hyman says.
On the chewy means it's strong on the bridle. It's a little bit like the one on the bit on the bridle. So it's chomping on the bit. In other words, it wants to keep going. So the jockey should let it go.
Yep. And Matt, when a horse has a jump out, are they? This is from Stephen Watts. Do they all carry similar weights, or how does that work?
No, well, the jump outs, the jockeys and the saddles are not weighed. So the weights could be varied. I mean, generally, it is the lighter riders doing it. So it's probably between 55 to 60, 65 kilos, somewhere around there. But they aren't weighed out before they go out for a jump out, no.
Yeah. And Robbie, will we have many 2-year-olds race before Christmas, from Stephen Hunter?
No, we won't have a lot, hardly any at all. Simply because, like we were saying earlier, timing is the key, and quite often there's a very little window of opportunity with 2-year-olds. Quite often they only have a very small amount of runs in them, and that being the case, Matt and I have already discussed looking at Blue Diamond Preludes, English races. We've got an eye on the Magic Millions with one horse at the moment. So we're trying to let our horses have the spring out to grow out. We've got some very exciting young horses, and we're going to target as many as we can towards that Blue Diamond series, because being Melbourne-based stable, logistically, it's going to be easier for those young horses to have a crack at those. And that window of opportunity will favour them being Melbourne-based at this point in time. If 1 or 2 pop up this side of Christmas, that's a bonus, but realistically, that's going to suit their growth pattern better.
Yeah, and I guess another thing to note there is people may look at the sales and go, okay, you guys bought a lot of horses this year. You'd expect a year later to see those horses come on the track. But a lot of our more expensive horses at the sales were the staying pedigrees because we didn't want to go head to head and lock horns with the colt syndicates and things like that. Would that be fair?
Very, very much so. Yeah, I mean, you're quite right there. I mean, some of the So You Thinks, they're bred to be 3-year-olds. The Frankel filly is bred to be a classic filly. And mind you, they've showed some terrific talent already. I mean, Matt and I have been quite impressed by the speed, the sectional speed they're showing is well advanced of their genetics power at the moment. So they're doing very good things for horses that are bred to be 3-year-olds. So, so they'll be tucked away, and they might be late season 2-year-olds, but they won't be entertained in that early series.
Yeah, and Matt, how many races ahead do you plan for a horse's prep? So, for example, I imagine it's a lot easier planning for a horse like Gonna Dance a Lot, where she gets the entry into the Oaks, so then we're going towards the Oaks. But how many? I guess for any other horse, how do you plan where they're going and how many runs before, and how do you map that out?
Yeah, again, it's solely dependent on the horse, Corey. So, I mean, a horse having had no starts making its debut, you're just planning one start ahead, seeing how it runs in its first run. If it wins, then you can start planning a nice program for it and where you're headed. But if it gets beat, then you got to start looking for the next maiden or sales race or whatever it qualifies for. A benchmark 58 handicapper, I wouldn't say you'd be thinking too far ahead. You'd be just 1 or 2 runs in the next 4 to 6 weeks kind of thing. And then, like a horse like Gonna Dance a Lot, that you can be thinking 4 months ahead because, like you said, you're already qualified for that end goal. So you can really go on a step-by-step basis. So it's purely down to the level of the horse and where it's at in its racing career.
Yeah. And Robbie, Frank Finlay just says, what are the things that you most like to see the day after a horse races, and conversely, what you prefer not to see?
Well, you prefer to see a healthy appetite, cool legs, a good energy. You want to see, clean eyes. A lot of horses come out of the race with black eyes from getting dirt and everything. So you want to see nice sparkling eyes, cool legs, good appetite, the skin bouncing back, so good electrolyte replacement. So then if they bounce out of the box in the morning with all of those boxes ticked, there's a good chance that horse will be able to race very quickly. So what you don't want to see is a sluggish horse the next day, poor appetite, any negativity in the legs, black eyes, all those sorts of things, because then you're going to get a slow recovery and there's a fair chance that you'll have a negative, 72 hours plus, and you might need 3 weeks or more to the next run, or need to have some paddock time or antibiotics or whatever to get over the run. So that all trainers want to see the horse that's raced, have a very, very positive recovery in the first 24 hours.
Yep. Question here from Daniel Guthrie, Matt. On a race day when you think you've got a horse that's going to win, if you both don't go, is it a raffle who attends, or does Robbie pull rank?
Arm wrestle. No. Basically, we take it in turns, and it's not a formal agreement or anything like that. It's like Robbie might have a haircut today, then Robbie might get his eyebrows done tomorrow, then Robbie might get his nails done the next day, and then he just doesn't want to go racing anymore. So no, it's just whatever happens.
Yeah. And do you have it mapped out for your staff on which race days they go, Robbie, or is it generally?
Yep. The staff are very organised. I mean, who ends up going out of Matt and I, we sort of work that out. But in recent times, Matt's been enjoying going since he's been in Australia. I've sort of done a lot of that over the years. So he's been enjoying going to more meetings than me, and getting familiarised with all the people he needs to, whilst he's whilst he's been, enjoying Australian racing. So, but we'll just take that in turns as we go. But the staff are very organised on the roster.
Yeah. Speaking of staff, actually, obviously I come down and see a few different faces around. How big is the team, and what sort of roles who are some of the faces that do some of the training as well? I mean, people like Jade, who's a foreman, and Reed and those guys probably aren't on here as the faces like you guys, but they have a big input.
Oh, yeah, it's a big team. I mean, it takes a lot of people. I mean, we're only a medium-sized stable compared to some of the big stables in racing these days, but it still takes, we have something like 37 people to make the show roll on, because with the 7-day racing, and it feels like more than 7 days once you get the night racing going. And some of the summer meetings will have up to, 3 meetings in a day, with the day, twilight, and then the night races. So to fit all of those meetings in, plus their days off, plus the Sundays and so on, Reed plays a big role. Jade, you got all the office staff that Corey, to do all the admin, plus the float drivers and ground staff, and there's a big team effort that make it all work. So there's too many to mention, but there's a lot of them that do so much work, from all the treadmill guys. That's taught most of them to do the treadmills. There's Amy Johnson, Frosty, Braden, Mick Fox, and all the guys that you'll see represented at the races that do so much work. And I've only mentioned some. Monique, Matt's partner, has been very active on the ground, but now she's a mum-to-be. She's transferred into the office to protect herself from the horses, of course, and then also work more so in the admin side of things now. So Sarah, as we know, has moved into another area in her career, but is still working with the stable on a lesser degree, doing a little bit of part-time work, but has spent 12 years in that space. And you know how active you are, Corey. So there's a lot of work that needs to run a stable, and we're only medium-sized, let alone how big the big stables are. But that's 7-day racing for you. You need a lot of people to make it work, let alone the vets and the farriers and the physios, and there's a heap of work to be done.
Yeah, and Pat Sylvie just says, Robbie, I'm not sure if this is a question or a little dig. He says, when was the last time you went to a provincial meeting?
When Fidelia won at Cranbourne, Pat, we backed her heavily, so I had to go and collect the money.
Daniel Guthrie says, this is one for you, Matt. How do you determine if a horse is a leader or it sits as a back marker?
Yeah, great question from Daniel. Obviously, it's dependent on what they're telling us in the mornings, in the jump outs and the trials, and their attitude as well. Like if you get a horse that's a mad puller, you rather them settle behind horses, save their energy. Or if you get horses with big, strong actions that need a lot of room, then you prefer them to be on speed. But then some horses are naturals, they burst out the barriers. So you don't want to what they call disappoint them out the barriers. You don't want to hold them back if that's their natural play, is to be first out and on the speed. Or horses that are slow out, there's not much you can do about that. They have to be ridden from off the speed. So a little bit of them dictating, and then us figuring out, on their feedback, what's best for them as well. So it's a bit of both.
Yeah, and Robbie, Paul Baker says he's got 3 3-year-olds with us at the moment, and he's just asking which are impressing you and likely to break their maiden prep with Rupert's Delight, Barclay's Bank, and Gossatino. All 3 are pretty good from my perspective, but you'd be able to answer that.
Yeah, well, Rupert needs dry ground, and every time we enter him, he either draws a bad barrier or there's rain coming. So he's not having a lot of luck with the barrier and weather gods, but he did go it really well Saturday morning. Barclay's Bank should win very quickly. He's quite a nice horse. It's doing everything right. And Gossatino's much the same. She hasn't had much luck, but can really run, so all going well. It'll work for her this time around. So her form doesn't read correctly in accordance to her talent, but every time, we prepare her up, she actually runs quite well. So with a bit of luck, they should all find the winner's stall very quickly.
Yep, and a few questions popping up now. Michael Spohr just asked about mounting yard tickets and if they'll be hard to get hold of and how that works. To be honest, I can answer that one because obviously we're in constant chatter with Racing Victoria. Once we know what the rules are, Mike will definitely let everyone know. In an ideal world, it would just go back to normal where you get the 20 mounting yard passes, but at the moment it's been severely restricted to maybe 1 or 2 per horse, even when COVID wasn't here for that period. So once we know, we'll always pass that on to our owners and we'll get the maximum number that we can possibly get as a stable for everyone. Then I've got Daniel Guthrie just says, I think we need to have a main event on the next webinar of Robbie versus Matt in the arm wrestle to settle things for good. That's not bad.
You better get Mathew some tissues though for that one.
No, well, you got another shoulder. You got another shoulder, so we'll have to change arms.
So Matt's actually, for those that don't know, Matt's obviously into a lot of sports, but he loves the rugby, and obviously we beat the Springboks a couple of weeks ago, and he's been upset. So
more tissues.
So Pat Sylvie says here, Robbie, all good with Carrier Buster after her big win. Obviously, a great win, that one.
Very good win. Yeah,
she's pulled up okay.
Pulled up a treat. Yeah, pulled up really good.
And then Ann Mitchell's just asking, how long do you persist with a non-performing horse before moving them on, or is it a consultation with the owners and determined by the trainers?
Oh, a bit of both, really. Sometimes they're non-performing, not necessarily because of lack of talent. Sometimes it's, it's things like, wet tracks or bad barriers or things like that. And they're the frustrating ones is when, if they're non-performing because they don't have the talent, it's an easy decision. We'll all be in agreement and then we'll just sell the horse and move on, But when the horse in question is training really well and having bad luck with either bad track conditions or other factors, that's when they're frustrating. You tend to have a run or two longer and hope that everything falls into place. And if it doesn't, that's when you get frustrated and sell them on then.
Yep, and I've got a poll up at the moment, which you've probably all seen on the screen, and just talking about tried horses in Europe. Obviously, Robbie and Matt, for that matter, I might go for you first, Matt. But we've been looking at the moment a fair bit for tried horses in Europe, and we've probably looked at around a couple of hundred, I'd say, throughout the year that we've been sent through, and we've got different people on the ground, bloodstock agents, our own people on the ground over there, and we're always looking for tried horses, and it's definitely an option that we're exploring. So if you wanted to expand on that and how that works.
Yeah, it's not through lack of trying, as you've just said. We've been really hard at it, and people just have to understand that the market is so unbelievably strong. It's not only Australians trying to buy out of Europe, it's people in Hong Kong trying to buy out of Europe as well. And they hold a lot of strength. And then it's people in Europe buying in Europe as well. So we really are, when we're going out there looking for a top quality horse in training, we're trying to buy a ready-made product that we're hoping has still got potential. So it's a long-term plan, and it's not something that we can just go and not take seriously and just buy any old horse. So we're really trying to find the right one. And it is a difficult thing because, like I said, the world market is trying to do the same thing as what we're doing. So it's been a challenge. We've come close a couple of times, and Robbie, Corey, myself, we spent some late nights bidding on horses, etc., and doing a lot of investigating and research. And it's a tough market, but we'll get there. We'll get the right one, and when we do, we'll be very excited about it.
Yeah, and I guess, Robbie, to expand on that, if you look at the jumps races at Warrnambool and things like that, there's a lot of very expensive European gallopers that are running around in the jumps racing, and obviously, if we're going to buy a horse from Europe, we want it to be really challenging and being top quality. So we're not just going to buy a horse from Europe, we want to buy the right one. And I know that you've been, pretty ruthless with that view.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we want to try and get it right. We don't want to make an error. So we certainly want to cross our T's and dot our I's. And as Matt said, you know, we're not the only one doing it. So the competition we're up against is very tough. And some of the people that have outbid us, Joseph O'Brien and others, they're not, you know, it's a tough market out there, and we're up against some pretty tough opposition. So when we do bring the one home that we want, we're confident it'll be the right one for the stable to have us there on the podium, and that's what it's all about. So we'll continue to work hard in that space and give our stable and our owners the right opportunities is what it's all about.
Yeah, and we've got the New Zealand Ready to Run sales coming up, which we'll have a fair bit about that on the next webinar. So next month's webinar will cover that. But Matt, with all this searching, we actually left field landed. I wouldn't say we stumbled upon, because we knew the family very well. You did, but we found a yearling over there, a filly, and we've gone halves with your father in a Harry Angel filly. Yeah,
she's a lovely filly out of a dam who's related to Igugu, who was a champion racehorse in South Africa, as I'm sure a lot of you can remember, by Galileo. So she's an exceptionally well-bred filly. She's beautiful, obviously. That's why we bought her. And the idea behind the whole process with her is she's obviously a yearling. She'll turn 2 in January. And the aim is to race her once or twice in England in her 2-year-old season. So it'll be early next year, March, April. And then hopefully she shows that she's got ability, runs good races, and we can ship her here to Australia and carry on her racing career in Australia. And the reason for this is because they're Northern Hemisphere bred, they're 6 months behind. And if we had to ship her over now, it'll be a very long process until she runs. So she's going to be educated in England, have a start or two, hopefully show us potential. And when she comes here, she'll be the ready-made product, which is kind of what we are searching for with all these, horses in training and stuff. But except we're going to do it this way. We're going to do it our way, Yeah,
and potentially she gets a head start there, and that's quite a bit of fun there, Robbie. And we're not sure how we'll chop that up share-wise and things like that at this stage. It's a private thing, but if anyone is interested in that, then always reach out, because there's opportunities like that pop up from time to time, and we can always talk to people about how those processes work, because they're not always common knowledge unless they're following the sales. So just thought I'd bring that up.
I think the good thing about that, though, Corey, is that whether there's any room in her or not, it's not the point. The point is that it just goes to show that we're covering all bases, and we're giving our stable and our owners every opportunity to tick every box. And a filly like that, Harry's Angel's a really exciting young stand that stands here as well as over there. And a filly like that, if she gets some black type there or runs places there and comes here, they become very valuable broodmares. So it just goes to show the diverse opportunities that we're giving everyone. So, if everyone, if there's no room in her, it's easy enough to give you an order to follow up an opportunity like that, because that's the sort of things that we're doing now for everyone.
Yep, and this is one for you, Robbie. What about the Australian Ready to Runs? John Hymett was just asking, and obviously Inglis has theirs and Magic Millions, but I know that you've got reasons for looking at New Zealand for that particularly. But we also look at I'm actually going through the catalogue right now, and that you've given me a job to go through that and make lists. So we'll look at everything.
Pull your finger out, Corey. Get the list together.
I'm getting
we are doing that. We actually are in the process of also shortlisting the Australian Ready to Runs, which is the one of Inglis, and also the Magic Millions, because there's two different, the 3 breeze ups that we look at here. The New Zealand ones, you get a different style of horse. You're looking for more, your Sababills and that style of horse. They are expensive to buy, but you're looking for that type of horse, where in Australia, you're looking for more your speed horse. And some of those horses breezed up really well thus far in the English one. So, if they tick all the boxes and suit what our owners are looking for, well, absolutely, we're going to have a list of that type of horse to put forward. And the same applies with the Magic Million ones when they come up, and so on and so forth. So I think the point of all this discussion is we want to have a holistic approach to to everything that we look at, either domestically or internationally, so that we give our owners every opportunity. That's what it's about.
Yep. I've just got a question there from Paul Baker on some ownership questions. I'll actually contact you, Paul, on an email to answer that one. It's probably a little bit, it's probably a different topic that would take us off into another rabbit hole. But effectively just the process of buying and selling shares. So I can speak to you about that one. Bev Fisk just asked how the Lonhro Time Commands filly's coming along, Robbie.
Really good, Bev. Yeah, super. She had a little breeze up on the weekend and went really well. She's a great mover with a super pedigree. So we're pushing forward with optimism that she's just going to keep improving.
Yeah, Matt. Craig Abernethy said, "What's Matt and Robbie's favourite day of the week?"
Sure.
Matt loves the updates on Fridays, don't you, Matt?
Listen, I love Saturday because, especially during the Spring Carnival, it's just all the hype around the racing, and watching the racing is something that I definitely look forward to.
Yeah. Bobby's sausage is Saturday morning.
Also true. When he's around. Yeah.
And Janice Thomas says here, don't forget to buy some more grey ones for the grey lady. Obviously, she is a lover of all of our grey horses. And Robbie, on the, we may as well stay on the New Zealand ready to run theme. Daniel Guthrie's just asking how Bring the Stars came back, and he was actually a purchase last year.
Yeah, Daniel Moore was really happy with him at Geelong. He's just, Matt and I think he's a little bit rusty. He lacks a little bit of match practice because he'd been training on very wet winter ground, and sometimes it makes horses a little bit, I suppose, sluggish, for want of better expressions. And he finished on actually quite well, but we think that once he has a run or two and sharpens up a little bit and gets a little bit fitter, he'll really come into himself as he gets over a longer journey, because he can reel off some really good sections, and we've seen that last racing campaign when he was very unlucky at Flemington. So Daniel Moore was very pleased with him, and he worked particularly well this morning, actually. He galloped quite well on the grass this morning. So we'll stretch him out over a longer journey, more than likely on the weekend, and we'll just see how he goes. But we're hoping we can get him on a better track. We don't want to really run him on too wet a track.
Yeah, and as cold winter mornings, speaking of wet tracks, are cold winter mornings the worst part about training, Matt?
The worst part about training? I don't know. It's definitely a negative. It's hard. It makes it hard to get up when you hear the wind and the rain going outside, and you know it's going to be freezing cold. But fortunately, in Australia, you've got things like our facilities where we spend a lot of time in the shed out of the weather conditions. So it's not too bad. Yeah.
I've got another one here for you, Matt. Chas Preble has said, "Does Matt ever take Arthur to the races as a travel companion?"
No. It's very tempting. Arthur does try to jump in your car actually when you're in the car park. I don't know why he wants to leave there so badly, but he likes to pull those tricks and jump in your car and get stuck in the office. And he's definitely a character, but Arthur stays at the stables.
Yeah. And Robbie, Kevin Nolan says, over your careers, which is the most talented horse that, for whatever reason, didn't make it and it had an injury or was sold?
Vang Trois, definitely genuine Group 1 horse. Ironically, one of the first yearlings to come into the stable. And I thought, how easy is this training caper? You get a horse and you just get a Group 1 horse straight away. She only had 2 starts. The first one she won by 5 lengths in near course record time. And the second one she broke down, never raced again. And she's the grandmother of Hal Borson. And that was the beginning of our breeding. So, yeah, she was an absolute star, and unfortunately only had 2 starts.
Yeah. What's the most exciting time of the year to be a trainer in terms of, where the horses are in their preparations? Is there a specific time that excites you, Robbie, during the year? I know that you mentioned you didn't mind winter because you had the young horses in. Is that an exciting time for you, or would you still rather the spring where it's all happening?
Oh, I think the exciting time for me is around that Melbourne Cup time, not just for the obvious springtime racing, but it's a time of the year where we get to see what we've had a glimpse of in the winter. The winter, I don't mind winter because we get to educate the babies that we've bought throughout the year. And it's a really exciting time because it's the babies that we've spent so much energy on buying, and then you start to watch them develop. It's really exciting. Through what's a dormant time of the year, to watch these babies develop is very, very exciting. So then they have a rest and they come back Melbourne Cup time, and then into the new year when you really ask them to go leading into the Blue Diamond Preludes. That's very exciting in January, and to watch them, hit that top speed leading into that new year period. That's very exciting.
Yeah, and Matt, Craig Miguel's just asking, with spring and summer upon us, what are the top 6 or so horses we expect to feature? But it's probably a difficult one, like you said, to narrow it down. But which horses, I guess, have we got that have got locked in targets at the moment for the spring?
Well, obviously, Daily Bugle, he heads to the Guineas next, potentially. So he's one of the big horses. Then horses like King Magnus, he may go around this weekend. Token Spirits, will be aiming him at a couple of the Cup races. He's returned to the stables in extremely fine form. Tisma Bay looks like she's a potential Oaks filly the way she ran last week Wednesday.
Cable Bays, huh?
Yeah. Bernard Onslaugh's booked her place in the Oaks as well. And then we'll be very hopeful that, unless I've missed something, Robbie, you can jump in, but we'll be very hopeful that one or two of the babies really put their hands up, for that early summer season.
Yeah, we're hoping for one of the babies, and Helvorsen in the sprints, and Hasseltoff will do really well over the races in the carnival. He was just pocketed up in traffic on the weekend, so keep your eye on him when he gets out the 10 furlongs, and the young ones. But as Matt said, the fillies are going really well. Keep an eye on the fillies, Tisma Bay and Gonna Dance a lot in the Oaks, definitely. So, but the old boy Helvorsen, for the end of the carnival, he's a bit long in the tooth. He can't give you 4 quarters like in football terms, but he's still got a bit of zest in him the way he galloped the other morning.
Yeah, and here's another one for you, Robbie. It's from an anonymous attendee, but it just says, what are the main pros and cons when buying sharing a racehorse or leasing a horse? So if you just explain quickly the differences there.
Oh, the differences is when you lease one, you don't have to outlay any capital, but you never get to own that asset either. So the pluses are you don't risk any capital outlay. So that's a massive plus for those that want to try racing to see if it suits them. I think it's a great opportunity to do that first. And so you're not risking any money when the horse races. At the duration of their career, you hand the horse back to the owner, and for that you pay a rental of 20 or 25% of the net prize money. And if you buy the horse, you risk the outlay of the share, and if the horse isn't fast enough, whatever, you run the risk of losing that. But if the horse is a fast one, like some of the ones that we're talking about, well, you capitalise on that. So that's the difference between buying and leasing. Hope that answers the question.
Yep. And all right, Matt, if you could train any horse that's not in your yard now, what would it be?
I would have to say probably be Jockey. Obviously, he's the boom horse at the moment, and from the outside looking in, I don't know anything about the horse, personally, or on a day-to-day basis. But from the outside looking in, it just looks like a complete professional athlete, and looks like he's a pleasure to work with. That may not be the case, but from the outside looking in, the way he goes about things, I would love to be his trainer.
Yeah. Speaking of trainers, obviously Annabelle trains him, and on the last series before I started working for Griffith de Kock on the webinars, I had Henry Field on, I had Annabelle Neesham, and I had Dennis Pagan. So a few Group 1s there this last 6 months. So it goes without saying that there'll be a few Group 1s now here that I'm doing webinars here. It's natural progression, I imagine. All right, Robbie, what other areas of the industry excite you also on top of training? Obviously, training's the main goal and the main target, but what other areas excite you?
Oh, I love the breeding. We've got Australia and I own some brood mares, and that's something that I'm quite passionate about. As you know, I have a great friendship with Peter Ford, and Peter has worked alongside me at the yearling sales for many years, and he's very good at the breeding, and he's responsible for buying Black Caviar's mother. So nicks and crosses and genetic matchups and that type of genetic mix-up really interests me. And we've bred, Halvorsen and Don't Tell the Boss and horses like that. So answering that question earlier about what was one of the ones that was good that got away or didn't reach its true potential was Vangtois. So we started with her many years ago with Don Healy and Joe McBride and the owners that stayed in all the way through. And throughout that journey and that breeding and that passion for has evolved in Halvorsen and others. So so that's one part of the industry that I really like doing. That excites me.
Yep. And I guess this is a good question coming off that. I'll finish with the last two questions because we're starting to get late now and trainers' hours, but we'll finish off with the last couple. Mike McKelvey, who's a great client of ours. He's got some really nice horses in his team, Robbie, but he just asks, what of the first season sires have impressed you both so far? So we'll start with you, Robbie.
I really like the American Pharaohs. They're very strong attitude, great appetite, and they seem strong horses. The ones that we have in the stable have been really good. I mean, I've got several that I like, but he's one that we've been quite impressed with.
Yeah, and Matt?
Corey, I think the Russian Revolutions are really nice. They look like athletic horses and they look really sharp and forward. Yep.
All right. And final question, which is one that's maybe one not for air, but we'll start with you, Robbie, because you're quite good with these off-the-cusp political answers. But Daniel Guthrie asks a really tricky, sticky one here. Are there any other trainers that you just love to beat?
All of them, because they're all competition. Oh no, not really. I mean, I think that we're all pretty competitive. I think that everyone, once you get out there, wants to win. I think the gloves are off come game day. I don't think there's anyone that second place is first loser. I think that's how it works. I think we all help one another off a racetrack, but I think once you get on course, it's game on. I think that's fair, Matt.
Yep, that's pretty fair.
Yeah, obviously there's rivalries that build up over time, but usually what I've noticed in the industry coming in is that most of your biggest rivalries, Robbie, are people that are your closest friends because you like to beat your close friends.
Pretty much, and all the good trainers you respect the most have the best horses, so you probably end up finding that, they are. The biggest rivals are probably some of your closest mates,
Yeah. Anyway, another great webinar. Obviously, it went a little bit longer than I was expecting. We didn't have a lot of content tonight, but loads of great questions. So thanks for everyone attending. And anything you wanted to wrap up with, Robbie or Matt? So start with Robbie.
No, I just think that we've got some great young horses, and we only touched on a couple of stands, but we've got some rippers. They're all breezing up good. As Matt said, the Russian Revolutions are very quick. I noticed he's got the most in the Blue Diamond, Corey. He's got like 126, and they're pretty quick. The ones that we've got.
Who would bet against Newgate?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, but just in general, I'd like to thank everyone for their ongoing support. It's great that they jump on the webinar, and thanks for their support all year round. It's been fantastic.
And Matt?
Yeah, just reiterate what Robbie said is that thanks to everyone for their support. We are really missing them. I mean, it's really frustrating for me that since I've been here, I've been in so much lockdown that I haven't actually been able to meet all the clients and owners and supporters of the stable. So I'm still looking forward to that day, even though I've been here for 18 months. But this has been great, these webinars, and I'd like to put a face to some of the names one day. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and likewise for myself, I speak to a lot of these people on the phone, and I speak to some of them, every couple of weeks. But then, I actually wouldn't know what some of them look like for that exact reason, is we are in a lockdown for so long. So can't wait to get out, both the Sydney siders and the Victorians, I guess. So we'll be at the races soon when everyone gets double vaxxed. We'll be at the races, and hopefully it stays open then. And we have when these young horses are winning their Group 1s, we're all there together.
Sounds good.
Right. Thanks
Cheers,
again,
everyone.
guys. Appreciate it.
Guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.